Hello, my name is Allison Hill, and I'm a senior data scientist at IBM on the AI strategy and innovation team. Prior to that, I worked at our studio for about 3 years, where I was the product manager for data science communication, working closely with the rmarkdown team there. And one of the things that I spent a lot of time doing while I was at our studio, and even before that, was building websites using rmarkdown. And I often use Netlify. I used their free tier both personally and professionally for several years. And in the month of December 2021, Netlify is offering a pretty cool challenge. It's called Dusty Domains. So you can check it out more at dusty.domains and read about it. But they're offering to donate about $500 to charities in exchange for you deploying your site with Netlify. So it's intended for you to be able to dust off an old, maybe custom domain that you had, but it also works for plain old Netlify domains, and it also works for sites that you deploy for the first time this year in 2021. So for the month of December, what I've been doing is trying to show little small projects that you can build with rmarkdown, deploy to Netlify quickly, make money for charity in the process, and maybe learn a few things about how Netlify can make your life easier if you're an rmarkdown user and wish to be building websites and sharing them more easily. So in today's video, I've gotten a lot of requests for a straight up like top to bottom how to start a Hugo Apéro site. Hugo Apéro is a Hugo theme that I am the author of. I wrote it actually about this time last year in 2020. It was in preparation for the RStudio Global Conference, where I was doing a diversity scholars workshop that I called Introduce Yourself Online. So I'm going to start sharing those materials so that you have access to all of those. But I've also built, I used that workshop that I did as a way to kind of start field testing instructions for the actual Hugo Apéro docs site. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow along with my own blog post that I wrote for how to use the Hugo academic theme last year in a blog post that I called Up and Running with Blogdown in 2021. So you could consider this today, this video, up and running with Blogdown in 2022. So I'm going to be starting from this blog post and kind of walking through the same steps that I walked through with another theme and showing how you could instead get started with Hugo Apéro. So let me first show the IYO site. So this is from the Introduce Yourself Online workshop that I did last year for RStudio Global. Again, this was designed for diversity scholars, and our idea for that workshop, or my pitch, was that I wanted to do a workshop for diversity scholars that didn't already have a website or didn't already have an online presence. So we actually changed the way that we screened the applicants for that year for that diversity scholars workshop, so that we made sure that we didn't weight it towards people who had existing websites or had an existing kind of online presence. And we wanted to really kind of make sure that there was an important impact for the workshop. So in that workshop, I led people through a number of different ways that you can have an online presence. It wasn't just focused on the Blogdown package, which I'm going to be talking about today. But if you go through the materials section here, you can see what the pre-work was. In day one, we talked about how to just introduce yourself online. We talked about using the postcards package, which I did in another video, how to use a Distill website, how to embed a postcards page within a Distill website, and then how to finally add a blog to all of that. So by the end of day one, participants had a pretty good sense for different sort of levels of an online presence that you can develop using rmarkdown. In case you want to kind of have the lowest tier, postcards is a great way to do that. You can also do a Distill website with a postcards page if you have a little bit more content that you'd like to share. And then finally, kind of the final topic of that day was adding a blog to it. So that was still focused on Distill. In day two, it was all about Blogdown. And the Blogdown package allows you to be able to build Hugo websites using an R package. And the cool thing is that Netlify can actually build your Hugo site for you. So you still have to knit things locally. So you still are using rmarkdown to create some content. So you can still, which is a benefit for you, you're able to use .rmd files or .rmarkdown files and be able to have code that generates plots or analytical results, tables, anything like that you can include in your site. And then when you knit, that shows up in the rendered website. But then Netlify is able to build your site for you and run the actual Hugo build. So it's a really nice workflow. And it's kind of the only way I like to build my Hugo Blogdown sites. So just so you're aware, there's some materials up there for day 2, where we walk through why Netlify, why Hugo Apéro, and why the Blogdown package. I'm not going to go through these in as much detail, but know that they're there as resources, and I'll include them in the links for today. So what I am going to do is go through up and running with Blogdown in 2021. And since I'm on a totally different workstation now and I haven't tried anything, we'll see how this goes. It'll be interesting. I've already learned that Apéro does not work, or something doesn't work with Blogdown, specifically with the Hugo version 0.9. So I already know I'm going to run into that. So heads up, we'll do some troubleshooting as well along the way. So one of the first things that I recommend when you get started with this intention that you would like to build a Hugo site using the Blogdown package is to make sure that you're familiar with a few things. R is helpful, the RStudio IDE is helpful, and GitHub. I've been trying to make GitHub feel a little bit more accessible in this video series, but if you're feeling scared of it still, I really recommend reading through Happy Git with R by Jenny Bryan. It's an online book, but it's not really a book per se. It's really procedures for getting your workstation all sanitized and working well for GitHub. So I recommend going through that first. And then one of the, kind of really initial steps that I recommend thinking about for yourself is to really kind of set your website intentions. Figure out how you want this website to serve you. Make sure that you're not signing on to be the servant of the website. It feels a little bit like navel gazing, but I think it's really important not to just jump into the how do I do this without thinking about why do I want to do this? What are the things that I'd like to share? Because then that helps you figure out what kind of content you want to be able to display and make it easier for people to find and see. So I really like kind of taking a few minutes at the beginning of a workshop or before a workshop. I often ask people to do this ahead of time to kind of think about what kind of content they want to show on their site. This is all specific to the academic site, but you can get the same idea. What you want your upper menu to look like. So in an Apparel site, I sort of have an opinionated design here on my own site, for example. I always have an about page, and then I have a blog, which is irregularly updated. And then I have projects, and then I have talks. So those were the things that I really wanted people to be able to find very quickly. And then there are some additional menus on the bottom. So there's like a license, a contact form, and my RSS feed. But the top menu kind of really helps set the stage for people to find their way around. So I really recommend looking at a few sites, and I have a few listed here on my blog post that are all not using the Hugo academic theme. Many of them are using different even website structures altogether. They may not be using Hugo at all. But think about, looking through some of those at some point and trying to figure out what kind of directions do you want new users, new visitors to your site to be able to find right away. And then I don't give you much freedom with the Hugo Apéro theme, but think about what you want on your homepage. The Hugo Apéro site is a little opinionated on this as well. I kept it the way it was when I first came upon this theme, which it was originally called Blogophonic by Formspree, and then I made just a ton of enhancements to it, and I really had fun doing it. So the Blogophonic site also worked like this. The Blogophonic theme did, where there's a picture on one side, it can be on either side, and then there's a title, a role, or whatever kind of subtitle you want. It doesn't have to be specific to a company. It could just be more of a description. Social links, you can control whether those are shown here or other places. And then like a little kind of brief paragraph, basically, and it can be short, it can be longish. It's up to you how you want to do that and how you want it to be displayed. But the idea is that the homepage is not going to be a big scroller. So this is not a one-page website theme. Some people do make those for Hugo. You can have a single page website. Other themes allow that. This, I kept it because I kind of liked it, the ability to just sort of land somewhere and have a pretty simple place where people land right away on the homepage. And then you can explore and get to know the person a little bit better by exploring the top menu. Clicking down here, this goes to my about page, for example. So these are my ways and sort of my inroads into how people can start exploring what I've got on my website and what I'm sharing here. So those are some things that I think are helpful to think about before you start getting into the step-by-step, because the step-by-step can make you feel a little bit lost. There's a lot of weeds in there, and it can kind of be hard to kind of come up and try to kind of see the forest for the trees a little bit. So I'm going to start by creating my repo. I've been doing that every time. That's a good workflow. So I believe I'm on 8 now. Got a lot of catch up to do. So 08, Apparel through 2022. Actually, did I do 08? Or did I do 07? Let me see, make sure my numbering is correct. Oh, I did 8. Great. So I'm on 9. I'm glad I checked. Oh, 9, Apparel 2022. I'm going to add a README and create my repository. And like I've done every time, I'm going to click on that little button there, copy the HTTPS, and then I'm on a different workstation. So I'm going to open up our studio and file new project, version control, git, and then paste that in there. Perfect. New project. All right, so now we have the beginnings of a project. I'm gonna go over to the Git tab here. Our studio predictably added the rproj and gitignore files there. So looks like I'm all set. Thankfully, it looks like everything's hooked up on this computer. I'm on an alternate device because my computer decided to not turn on the other morning. And I'm trying to figure out a solution to that. When it rains, it pours. Okay, so I have done this. I have created the project. All right, so I would like to now create the site, but I'm going to first go over to my own Hugo Apéro docs for this because I believe I am specific about how to do that. So we've gone through now probably what I put in here as the setup. So this I set you up from like the total ground up, like signing up for Netlify, getting GitHub going, all of that. Oh, let's do check my Hugo version because I realize this is going to be, oh, I just installed it instead of, oh well. What I should have done was this one. Okie dokes. Okay, so I've got 844. That actually might be preferable because I think then over 90 seemed to create an error with a Blogdown shortcode that Blogdown was adding, which I need to try to kind of do a little bit more investigation on. But just so you know, we've kind of gone already through all of the steps here in this 01 setup. So I'm going to go to 02, create your site. So these are all in the Hugo Apéro docs. So I have created the repo. Now I have also created the project. You can see the screenshot here. Saw me do that. Now I need to create my site. So this is what I was looking for. These are my specific instructions for creating a new Apparel site. Okay, this all looks good. Okay, this always makes me hold my breath. Oh. I don't know, for some reason, every time I do this, even though I've developed, this is not even my first Hugo theme, but it always feels nerve-wracking to actually test it for real. And to think about other people using these instructions to test it for real just freaks me out. Okay. Oh, okay, so that worked. I don't know what the error was I got yesterday. Is so weird. Okay, but the example site works. That's fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to, I always do show a new window, and that's because there's some weird things with the RStudio viewer here. The RStudio viewer is based on an older browser. And so some of the CSS that actually does work looks wrong when you look at it in here. So I always blow it out. One thing you'll notice right away, like for example, it's small, but of course I notice it because I'm the developer. This text right here is actually supposed to match the title text. And if you go back to RStudio here, it's black there. So just like one of the small things, but I noticed them that really bugs me. So this is what out of the box Hugo Apéro site looks like. So if you were trying to just like get one going, get one to build, and you want to deploy it to Netlify, we're going to do it right now. And then, you know, I don't even know how long I've been recording, but you could just be done at that point and just start editing on your own. So that is what I'm going to actually do. I'm going to commit. And I hope that gitignore, okay. Before I do that, I'm going to do Blogdown check site. So this is a series of functions that we wrote last year for Blogdown version 1.0 to make it a little bit easier for people to be able to troubleshoot their sites. It's a lot of stuff, but these were a lot of kind of gotchas that were sort of invisible before. So you can kind of think of this as like the rmarkdown team was, kind of holding your hand here. A successful check looks like this. So an kind of clear circle. A check that needs your attention looks like that. So a filled in circle. So that's kind of a to-do item. And then progress is kind of indicated by the little vertical pipe. So first it checks my config toml and it opened it up. It checked my base URL setting, and it says to update your base URL to your actual URL when we're ready to publish. We will definitely do that. Checking ignore files. It looks like ignore files is fine. That's line 14. And found the unsafe setting for gold mark. Good thing. So config toml checks out. Checking the get ignore, checking for items to remove, checking for items to change, blah, 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 blah. You can safely add DS store. Let's go ahead and just do that just to be DS store. I don't need thumbsdb because that's for Windows and DS store is for Macs. Checking for items to ignore if you build the site on Netlify. Yes, I will just go ahead and add those. They're not actually generated right now, but let's just go ahead and make sure that we pass a clean check site before I commit so that I don't have to remove things later. Found one file that should be committed in Git. Oh, the Blogdown post ref. Okay, that's fine. Check complete, get ignore is done. Save, close. Checking Netlify toml. Oh, I'm building 8.4.4. That's why it's working. Okay, so I still need to troubleshoot that. So I'm going to keep using that version. And it tells me to set it. Hugo version is not set in the R profile. Okay, it is using it, but it's not set in the R profile. Move this. And now anytime you make a change in the R profile, oh, it is. Oh, I need to restart R. Okay, so my Hugo version is fixed there. So you have to restart R for that to take effect. That's why it's not registering it. Check Netlify toml. Looks like my Hugo version matches what I'm running locally, which is exactly what I want. It's a match. Blogdown and Netlify are using the same Hugo version. Lovely. Netlify toml checks out. Checking my content files. Everything checks out. I'm going to do session restart R. And then I'm going to run check site again and just make sure that everything looks clear. Cool. Yeah. So now it registered that I do have that in my R profile. Okay. So that's a pretty clean check for me. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead and commit. And I'm going to do on a Mac, Command A, spacebar. Don't kill me. I'm just going to commit everything. So, example site. It's really not best practice with Git and GitHub to just commit all the files. All right, brief interlude. I have pushed successfully to GitHub. So now my whole site is there, but I need to start it in Netlify. So I'm going to go back to my own instructions. I have done essentially this, but for a different theme. I'm going to skip create content because it's not super critical. I talk about Blogdown options there. Those are already kind of set up for you now. And Hugo Apéro. This is still important. It's important content. It's helpful because it talks a little bit about the importance of knitting and building your site and how to do that. So here I talk a little bit about my workflow at in our studio at this point. So every time you go into your site, when we created our new site, we did what's effectively the equivalent of Blogdown serve site. I'll go in here to show you. So let's say, for example, if I killed that viewer and I just removed it and I deleted this. Oh, I don't have the live preview. Oh, here it is. There's my local host. So this was the live preview I generated before. So the way to re-get that back is every time you open up this new project, I would always run this just to make sure that everything's running well with your site. Go to add-ins, and once you have the Blogdown package installed, you can click on the serve site button. So it's usually what I do. I always have this running in the background. I open it up in a big window, and then that way I can see the changes as I'm making them. View site in the RStudio viewer pane, but then pop it out into a new browser window. Select the existing files to edit using the file pane in RStudio after making any changes. Knit to preview. So there's some keyboard shortcuts you can do that. You can also now in the IDE, I believe, let's go to an rmarkdown file. You can also now click on this little button, knit on save. And that way, every time you save, it will automatically knit for you. So you don't have to remember to do the 2 steps. I actually kind of prefer the 2 steps because it helps me keep the ability to write bad code, I guess is a good way to put it. So I can write code that doesn't work right away and troubleshoot it kind of more in the way that I'm used to interactively in RStudio. I don't really like it knitting automatically as I'm working or developing code. So if you're working on a blog post or any other kind of content that uses R, where you're maybe trying to create a plot or you're trying to create like a dplyr, data wrangling pipeline, and you're not quite sure exactly what you're going to do yet, and you would like to work through it with a data set, then I really recommend, kind of keeping it like this and not having the knit on save. And then that allows you to keep saving and working as you go and then knit when you're ready to, but then you can still work through the chunks interactively like you might be used to in your normal work session. Okay. The console will detect the change, blah, blah, blah. When happy with changes, add, commit, push changes to GitHub. And then I show you making the get ignore file. We already have that. Check yourself. We've already checked ourselves. All right, publish site. We're ready for the Netlify Fireworks edition. So thus far, we've only been previewing our site locally, pushing the source files to GitHub. I assume that you do want to have something that you can share with other people, though, other humans, and that's going to require a link. So let's get after it. We don't actually have to do any of this part. That's kind of giving you like a way out if you're not totally comfortable with continuous deployment, but we're going to go ahead and do that right now. So I'm going to go online to Netlify. I already have an account, but definitely follow through the steps if you need to create an account. Oh, I have not logged in. Let's log in with my GitHub. There we go. Okay. New site from Git. I believe they changed it. It actually looks a little bit different. Add new site, and then now you do import an existing project. So then I pick GitHub. And we're going down to 09, Apéro 2022. And it should detect everything for me because I have a file in there called netlify.toml, and that's my, my plain text way of communicating with Netlify and telling it what I want my build settings to be. So I'm just going to click deploy site. And we should see something like this. And we do indeed. It's starting up. I like clicking on it to see the deploy in progress. It's using the right Hugo version, which is good. This is all a healthy looking build. Hugo build, Netlify build complete. Site is live. All right. What did I get? Gracious Tereshkova. Whoa, that does not look great. Many heart attacks happen a lot with me. Okay, so the site looks great, I think. I think it looks really good. That's the default example site. If you wanted to just kind of start monkeying around with stuff, I've got what I hope are really good sources of documentation for you for how to configure your site. We've already covered deploy your site. Section configuration. So in a Hugo Apéro site, some pages are individual pages, like the about page. This is a single page. This is not a section. But blog is a section, meaning that there's subpages within it. And what you could see here is this is what's called a listing page. So this is sort of like, if you're looking at a website, like, for example, I ordered some new yoga clothes this morning. When you're looking at the site and you're kind of scrolling through and you can see all the different styles, That's kind of what a listing page is. But then when you click on the one that you want to see more information about, maybe you want to see how like the size guide or see what the materials are, all of that stuff, then you usually click on the item and then you go to the single page where it's just that item, right? So same here. So this is a listing page, and then you can see a couple different blog posts. You can scroll through, and then when you click on any one of them, then you go to an actual post. Same with projects. Projects is also has a section. So this is the section listing page, and then each individual project that you click on is its own single page. Talks. This is another one with sections in it. A collection is kind of a weird thing, so I'm just going to kind of leave it at that. It's sort of a collection of sections. It was more of a stretch goal for me because I really wanted to use it for teaching. So you can see that I kind of optimized it for myself there. Elements here is just a way for you to be able to see all the different styles and element examples that go into a Hugo Apéro site. This was actually a page that I left in there from the Blogophonic theme that I adapted to make Hugo Apéro. But I thought it was really helpful to be able to kind of see all at once everything. So when you go back through the Hugo Apéro docs, that's what you can expect to find. Site configuration is all about how to configure your config toml file, which is in the project root. And that helps you to be able to set your Hugo variables, set some Apéro variables. So Hugo theme includes both variables that let you talk directly to Hugo, and then also a Hugo theme like Apparel also gives you some variables. So when I want to give you some more ability to customize something that I've made, I'll make a variable available to you in config toml. And so I walk you through some of those. So for example, I give you the ability to pick a favicon. So this little lemon up here is your favicon, or my favicon for the Hugo Apéro docs. And then the logo, for example, I picked a little penguin for my logo. So that's how you can set all of those up. So those are variables that I provide to you. Hugo doesn't necessarily know about them, but I'm using Hugo under the hood to be able to pull from those. So I'm saying essentially like, I'm going to plop this logo here. Tell me which file it is, what you want to be your logo. So that's config toml. There's also some color themes that I've adapted for people. I love the color themes. They were developed by my former RStudio intern, and now she works at RStudio, Desiree De Leon. She did a really great job designing some custom color themes for this Hugo theme. There's also some font options, and then some instructions for how to customize your social icons. So these guys right here, those dudes. Menus, how to change the top navbar menu. So if you remember when I talked about setting your intentions, that's one of the things that you should really think about. Like, what words do you want people to see when they come onto your site going across the top? And then how to check your configuration file, which we've already shown as part of check site, but check underscore config will also work for that. So I hope that these instructions can help carry you through to where you get to the point where you can kind of have fun and start customizing the site. But what I want to do is build on some of the GitHub patterns that I showed in a previous video. So I showed some simple GitHub patterns for collaborating with yourself and working solo in GitHub. So now I'm going to kind of try to transition over to doing that and just show a few of the things that I really like about this workflow that I've set up for you now. So now if you've followed these steps, you have like all the wiring set up, and that's kind of the hardest, like most finicky part to it. But I really want you to enjoy it and have fun building your site. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to first in Netlify. Do I still have Netlify open? Yes. I want to show you the site settings. So if we go over to build and deploy, you can see that I'm only deploying the production branch. I am not doing any branch deploys, and that's just like good for me right now. And we do have deploy previews, which is what I want to show real quick. So I'm going to make some changes, but I'm going to do it in a branch. So I'm going back to RStudio. I'm clicking on the 2 boxes, 1 diamond button to create a new branch. And I'm going to change some things around in the site really quickly. These are all things that are documented in the online documentation. So I'm going to quickly, I'm not going to go through it too in detail, but I just want to change some sort of like high impact things for. So the default theme is sky, which I think is kind of pretty, that blue. But let's go with poppy. That's one of my favorite themes. You can also do a custom color theme, and I show you how to do that in blog posts on the website as well. Let's change the heading font. to better and Atkinson legible. I'm gonna leave everything else as is, but this should start looking different. Maybe what I'll do is I'll remove the collection from the header. It's still there, the source code is still there. This is just removing it from the visible header that you have. Okay. So commit, changing look of site. I can hear that our lunch is ready downstairs, which is exciting. Okay. So back in GitHub over here, you can see that new theme had recent pushes less than a minute ago. I'm going to do a pull request because I want to see that deploy preview. I haven't even looked at it locally, but I'm going to create a draft pull request. Okay, now let's watch little Netlify bots. They're going to come through. I can inspect the deploy log, blah, blah, blah. And you can do a bunch more changes as well. Like I just did one commit here, but you can do obviously as many commits as you like. And once you do the draft pull request, it'll just keep updating. So you'll be able to see if I make any changes now, you will see it as well. There we go, browse a preview. Let's check it out. So you can see the theme is different, the color's different, the fonts are different, but the site still works, everything's fine. So you can see that if I merge this in, this is what my site would look like. So real quick, I'm going to do one more GitHub pattern that I find is really useful for me when I'm working. If I'm working and I'm able to just kind of keep previewing locally, which you can do as well. Let's go to here. You can see that the local preview updated as well if I had shown you that. So let's try just making a few more changes. I'm going to, let's go to peach here, and then I'm going to go back to Francis. I'm going to do better for the actual custom font. I'm going to commit, but I'm not going to push. So whatever you type here is your commit message. If you're working on your own and you just don't want to be pushing a lot to GitHub, because with now that I've started this draft pull request, every time I push to that branch, Netlify is rebuilding my deploy preview. So if you want to kind of limit that, I'm just going to commit that change, make sure that it's like kind of parceled out from other changes that I want to make. And then I'm going to show you how I'm going to amend that. So let's see, let's make a little change. I'm going to change the homepage image. So I'm going to go over to content _ index.md. So you can see it's linking to image revoir JPEG. Let's make it this one. Okay, so I just changed the image a little bit just so it looks a little different. And then I can do image left. Let's do false here. So it flips. Okay, that's actually pretty nice. I like that. Okay. Let's see if I have any other things that I can change. Okay, I'm going to go forth. So if I wanted to, I can stage that, and then I can click on this little amend previous commit button, and you can see that the commit message stays the same. Now I can edit theme and homepage image, and you can change that and then commit. You can do this as many times as you want without pushing, as long as you do not push. If you push in between, you're not going to be able to amend. So let's go back. I'm going to go back to here, and I'm going to change it back to Poppy. Okay, so you can see the change popped up again. I'm going to amend the previous commit because I haven't pushed yet. Commit that. So now I should be at a point where I'm back to the Poppy theme. And now I'm going to push. Okay, so you should see just a single commit, I believe, there. Let's confirm. There we go. Yep, edit theme and homepage image, right? But you can see that I did several commits and changes in between by amending that previous commit. So that's one way to kind of keep your commit history a little bit cleaner if you're just kind of like futzing with things and you don't necessarily want to trigger a new Netlify deploy preview for every change. And you can see that it took away my deploy preview, but it's coming back and it's the same link as it was before because it's linked to the pull request number. So deploy preview -1. So let's look at it. Back to Poppy. Okay. So that all looks same to me. I'm going to mark it as ready for review. And I'm going to merge in this pull request, but even like, normally I would have a lot more commits in here. Even maybe you don't want these two to show up. So maybe you want them to just kind of get merged in as a single merge commit essentially. So when you go to merge your pull request, you can click on this down button. And if I'm working mainly alone or if I'm working with somebody else, I usually will coordinate with them before doing this. But what is kind of nice for keeping your own personal website GitHub history a little bit cleaner is to do squash and merge. So that means that the two commits from this branch will be combined into a single commit in the base branch. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to change it to squash and merge. And then you can see that you're still able to access what the actual commits were, but they're not going to be merged in as separate lines. They're going to be merged in as a single commit. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that branch because I don't need it anymore. And if you go back over to my main branch, you can see now that I've got 3 commits, but I actually had 2 commits as part of this PR, right? But you can see that I merged that in, and then changing look of site is what is all you see. But if you click on that, then you can see that I had two commits there. So that's what a squash and merge would do for you. So it's one way of kind of keeping, if you're feeling like you want to do a lot of work in branches, but you're not wanting to necessarily have those commits show up in your main branch. That's kind of one way to keep it hygienic. And then the other way is to do amended commits while you're working locally. Just don't push. And both of those patterns, I believe, are documented in How to Get with R. Let's see. The repeated amend. So that's using the amend commits. So she has this rock climbing analogy that helps. And I've really enjoyed that workflow a lot, having that. And I'm not sure if she has squash and merge in here. Let's see. No, she doesn't talk about that there. So anyway, I think that's kind of nice. We should have now a build done. Site overview deploys. Yes, so I should have, oops. Oh no. I don't know what happened there, but it works. You can see the changes there. I'm going to make a custom name. And then I'm going to submit it to Dusty Domains. Site settings. Let's change the site name. I'm going to name it the same thing I named the repo, so it's easier for me to keep track of. Apéro 2022. So now the last thing we need to do is I need to make this URL the base URL for my site. So that's the last kind of change that you need to do. Once you update and you actually want to share this thing, you want to make this thing your thing, go to config toml and set the base URL. The base URL has to start with HTTPS, unless you're doing like a subdomain within a other domain, which you probably know what you're doing, then you don't need me. But that part is really important if you're just deploying this as a plain old site. Now I'm still in my old branch, so I need to go back to main, and I'm going to need to do a fresh pull to make sure I update all the changes that were just merged in by myself. And then I'm going to go ahead and let's see. Oh, it's telling me that I have to commit. Ugh. Now I'm in that little, okay, I'm going to actually just, there we go. Now me. Okay. Now get pull. Okay, so now I've changed it. Go back to config toml, make that change, and then I'm just going to push straight to main. When you're working by yourself, don't feel bad about doing that for small changes. Update base URL. Okay, great. So now the last step is I'm going to submit this to Dusty Domains and earn $500 for charity and feel good that hopefully I've given you a head start to getting started with Hugo Apéro for the year 2022, if you're so inclined and interested in making one. Let's go to Dusty Domains. All right. I'm going to stop sharing briefly, finish entering. I first purchased this URL in 2021. Okay. Share screen. All right. Yes, $500 to charity. I just bought a domain and shipped the project in the same dang year. Please clap. Check out my site that contributed $500 to charity. My last step is I'm going to add, it gives you a neat little preview. Cute. I'm going to go back to, let's see, where did GitHub go? Here we go. I'm going to add that link here. There we go. So now I'll always be able to remember the link that goes along with this repo. So hopefully this scratches the itch of needing to get sort of a start to finish way of having a Hugo Apéro site that is wired up with GitHub for continuous deployment to Netlify, and one that you can use some pretty nice solo workflows. Like if you want to do draft pull requests, for example, use deploy previews through Netlify. Like I mentioned in a previous video, if you want to do branch deploys, you can activate those. I recommend picking individual branches for if you're doing like heavy duty work, like especially if you're actually changing your Hugo theme to Apéro or to a different, away from Apéro. I recommend doing that in a branch and then having a special deploy preview for that as you're working so you can make sure it's building correctly. But hopefully this has been a useful video, and thank you so much for joining me.